In the know, non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
And I tell you guys I love you. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I will ride with this group until they don't let us play anymore.
Oh, yes. Inject it. We need like a montage of all the great speeches in recent Vikings history. I'm going to try and hodgepodge this right now. I'm going to get your blood really pumping, especially with the third one here, okay?
All right.
It's going to peak. Okay.
Hey, you held them to 20 points, man. You gave us a chance at the end. But I got 3 words for you. You like that? And I tell you guys I love you. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I will ride with this group until they don't let us play anymore games. So, I heard it all week long, right? 0-9 on Monday night. Yeah! You like how this tastes?
Oh!
You like that?
He blew the line.
Dude,
he had them too. They were ready to run.
I know.
Yeah, come on, coach.
Yeah,
It's like,
that again?
You know what? O'Connell's speech there too. Not only is it a fantastic use of the F-bomb, but for all of those who say, if you swear, you sound unintelligent. Like if you swear, and you know what? If you drop F-bombs constantly, that's a problem.
You're probably dumbass. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably not smart. But if you strip the F-bomb from that speech, it's good. The F-bomb makes it great.
I agree. It peaks it. You got to be very strategic with your F-bomb.
Like the emotion of that F-bomb, it's like a it's like a punch, right? Like a cross. Like right to your jaw. It's like, okay, you're on a roll, and now I'll ride with you until they.
It's like a freight train. It's like a freight train T-boning your car at an intersection.
Right to your jaw.
It's like a
jaw. I was trying to.
It's like a sledgehammer to your sternum and hospitalizes you.
It's like a right cross. That's what I was trying to think of. A right cross. That's what it's like. It's like bang. Like it just makes me emotional to hear that.
It is.
I will recklessly speculate with you guys.
I love you. I mean it. From the bottom of my heart, I will ride with this group until they don't let us play anymore games.
Yeah, let's go.
God. Run through a wall when I hear that.
I will recklessly speculate with you guys until they won't let us effing recklessly speculate anymore.
Presented by TCL. No matter what you watch, TCL has award-winning TVs for you to watch and recklessly speculate on. All with stunning picture quality. TCL makes more than just TVs. They offer mobile products, audio devices, and home appliances. TCL brings you joy and simplicity through innovative technology. Learn more at TCL.com. This is a Saturday Checkdown episode in which we're going to answer a question from a listener that basically, to sum it up, is should the Vikings be considering tanking instead of trying to win as many games as possible again? So we will address that in a short moment here. But there's a lot of Vikings fans still in need of therapy based on the way things ended just a few months ago. No better place or places to go for throttle therapy and therapy out on the lake than Power Lodge and Miller Marine. Judd, let's for the YouTube audience. I could see Judd here trying to figure out how to use the the technology on the Bennington here.
Yeah,
I might not let you drive it, but you could definitely be on the pontoon.
I wouldn't let me drive, but I could. Here's what I am thinking. I'm in the back, right? Relaxing, beer in hand, ball game on, right? Twins game on, relaxed as can be. And look, I have essentially lived in this state for my entire life. And I'm going to tell you right now, we're again getting through a winter that quite frankly sucked. Okay. We have a very short amount of time now to maximize those gorgeous days. And what better way than to do that on a Bennington with sports relaxation? Think of it. The sun beating down you guys, you're taking a nap. Perhaps you're fishing, but who knows what you're doing? But what you're doing is you're enjoying the water on that Bennington.
Miller Marine in St. Cloud, the world's largest Bennington pontoon dealer with over 70 boats inside the showroom, and also Power Lodge with multiple locations around the metro. PowerLodge.com and MillerMarine.com. All right, boys. Let's go to this is the extra sort of spillover feedback from Min Choi. We need to tank, he says. Our regular season last year wasn't as good as it's been portrayed. I want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl, and it's just a fact that 3 seeds don't win the Super Bowl. 4 seeds don't win the Super Bowl. They just get low draft picks. According to Sports King, this is how much each seed has won the Super Bowl.
Oh.
All right, I'm going to trust this research. A 1 seed has won the Super Bowl 53% of the time. A 2 seed has won it 21% of the time. So that's like 75%. So 3/4 of the time it's a 1 or a 2 seed. A 3 seed is 4%.
Wow.
A 4 seed is 13%. Oftentimes the 4 seed, there's a chance the 4 seed could be like a better team. Well, no. Try to think here.
The only way would be is if the 3 seed gets knocked off and then that wild card team has to go to 1 and then the 4 has an easier path to 2.
So the 4 seed is a 13% rate. Maybe it's just an anomaly. And then 5 seed, 4%, 6 seed, 4%, 7 seed, it's new, has yet to win it. So what we should have done, Min Choi says, traded Kirk, Dalvin, Za'Darius, Daniil, etc. Extend Jefferson, Hawkinson with front-loaded contracts, go 2-15, and pick first or second. I mean, there's still time to trade Kirk, Dalvin, Za'Darius, and Daniil. There's still time to do all these things. I mean, this is going to drive fans crazy, but
Right.
should the Vikings, should they swallow hard and actually consider tanking, even though they won't?
Oh, boy. No, not now. We talked about this a year ago, and this was, I mean, for all of you right now who are cursing this question and saying, what a moron, keep in mind, this franchise liked Ryan Poles a lot. And Ryan Poles, who is now going into his second year as GM of the Bears, his whole thing was to basically take the house and destroy it and start new. So there was a chance. The Vikings at least talked to a guy and liked a guy whose idea was tanking is smart, and they decided against that. I think if you were going to tank, if you were going to make that decision, you would have done it after Rick and Mike were fired, right? Going into 2022. At that point in time, you tried to trade Kirk and a bunch of guys. You didn't. So do I think that you should try to tank with this team now? No. First of all, the division can be won, so you can make the playoffs. And while I realize that assures nothing as far as the ultimate goal of this show, this might sound crazy, but I think you have put yourself in too good of shape now, roster construction-wise, to entertain actually doing what it would take now. I think a year ago that the pieces were in place to strip it down. Now, like, you can trade some of your best players, but you're still talented. I don't see it as being a good idea now. And this is coming from a guy who loves tanking. Embrace the tank. I just don't think that this is the time now. I think this team actually has enough talent. Not saying that they're going to be great, but it's not viable to me at all.
I don't think you can just I think every tanking situation, I should say, is relative. So the Vikings aren't currently constructed to tank, and nor should they consider tanking with a Hall of Fame wide receiver, a pretty decent quarterback, an offense that is really good, and a second-year head coach coming off a 13-win season. Now, 4 years ago, when the Vikings at least started 0-5 in 2020, and it's like, okay, yeah, they might go on a run here, but should you consider tanking? Should you consider just basically punting here, getting a high draft pick? You've started 0-5 and you're now behind the 8 ball. Okay, now it's a relative conversation, and now you can consider it. But I think as the Vikings are currently constructed, tanking is just not really in the cards, and I don't think they should be thinking about that.
Yeah, I don't know that we'd have to go back and roll the tape. I don't know if Judd's ever, got me into his tanking vortex throughout the years, but I don't think I've ever been gung-ho about the Vikings tanking. I think the furthest I've gone is don't fear. Listen, if you're 0-5, like Declan said, maybe you can lean into it. Oh, it's just one of those seasons where things aren't going our way, so let's shut a couple guys down or make a couple trades, and if you happen to win 3 games, it's not the end of the world. Right. But this team, even if you were to trade, this is the crazy thing. Let's say you were to trade Za'Darius and Daniil and Dalvin this summer, which I think there's a good chance 1 or 2 of those guys get traded. You're still going to put up a bunch of points on offense. Now, if you decided, okay, we're going to trade Kirk as well as the 49ers and not get Trey Lance back, or Trey Lance comes back and he's terrible, and Nick Mullins is your starting quarterback or something, I actually think it's kind of crazy, but you could probably plug a lot of different quarterbacks into this system with these weapons, and you wouldn't be a total disaster. You wouldn't be like the Chicago Bears or the Houston Texans or something. They've built a good enough car to where it's almost impossible to crash it completely. So, and there is something to be said for look at an organization like the Steelers, who, going back almost 20 years now, the Wilfs have said they want to model themselves after the slow and steady organizations like the Giants and the Steelers. The Steelers have had, I think, 3 head coaches since the early 70s. They haven't had a losing season under Mike Tomlin. So the Steelers are able to retool on the fly. Okay, they lose Ben Roethlisberger. They're back in the mix for a quarterback. Let's try Kenny Pickett. We don't know if he's going to be a franchise guy or not. They're going through this whole transition. They lose Antonio Brown and all these weapons. They bring in new weapons. They bring in a new quarterback. And they still finish with 9 wins. Like, you can do it that way. I think the Vikings are closer to being that type of organization where they can just kind of keep winning games and being relevant. But my criticism of the Vikings is they oftentimes get too comfortable with that. At some point, you're going to have to get aggressive and find the successor to Cousins, At some point, you got to stop paying players for their past productivity, like Adam Thielen a couple years ago and Harrison Smith, and make some tough decisions. And they've started doing that, and they've given themselves some leeway and some freedom after 2023. So, no, I do not advocate for tanking.
We are so guilty of celebrating good. And it's not just the Vikings. It's a lot of teams here. And I feel like the fan base, and to also look in the mirror, the media does the same thing. Like, we celebrate good. And so to your point, Phil, yeah, I think there's a big question about, like, if you want to target a quarterback who's going to be a franchise guy and you don't get some luck, like you really draft that high, it would behoove you to stink. But the thing about that is that was last year. Like, you had your chance when Kwesi and KOC got the jobs. You could have said Daniil, Harrison Smith, Kirk. At that point in time, he didn't have no trade protection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could have gone right through that thing and cleaned it out and just said, we're going to stink, too bad. And then at that point in time, you probably hope to draft top 3 in this past draft, and you get a guy that you wanted. They made the conscious decision not to. So it does leave them in the pickle of, okay, how are you going to find Kirk's replacement? Again, assuming that it's going to be damn near impossible to probably go from their draft position that they'll find themselves in next April up to like 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very difficult.
Yeah. I'll give you another example too. And this team has been bad fairly recently, like maybe 15 years ago, but the Kansas City Chiefs, just largely a good, steady organization going back, like, I was going to say 30 years. I mean, they had some doldrums in the 80s, but the Chiefs, since about when I was born, like, 1986, 10-win team, they had a couple bad years, but basically since the late 80s, they won 8 games, 11, 10, 10, 11, 9, 13, 9, 13. Goodbye, Marty Schottenheimer, 9, 7, 8, 6. Like, the Chiefs have been kind of the Vikings, and then they finally made the aggressive move to get the guy at quarterback, moving off Alex Smith, and they didn't have to tank to do it. In fact, the Chiefs were coming off of, let me see here, 3 straight seasons of 11, 12, and 10 wins and playoff appearances. Actually, it was 2 years of 11 and 12 wins, and then they drafted Mahomes, sat him for a year, still won 10 games, got to the playoffs, and then they replaced him. But, like, they were winning 11, 9, 10, 12 games while they were transitioning to another quarterback, and then boom, but they had to trade a bunch of picks to move up 17 spots. So you don't always have to tank to get to where you want to be and win a Super Bowl. It is one way to do it. I think the Vikings want to model themselves more after the Chiefs, more after the Steelers than the Texans and the Lions and teams that are just like in a perpetual state of tanking because they're terrible. So.
Right. I think the question there, though, is, are you going to find yourself, because it's not an occurrence every draft where a Mahomes type of player will drop enough. Because, like, if Mahomes slotted in where he should have gone, the Chiefs probably didn't have the collateral to get up to get him, right? Mm-hmm. So it sort of takes some luck, too, of teams being like, okay, that guy is good, but he's a project. The one thing they did that I absolutely love and subscribe to, too, is they did not feel that they had to start the kid from the first day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's 1 year, but think about the amount of work he probably got.
Oh, my
he
God.
Probably got a ton.
And Andy Reid, obviously, you hope that
Right, the
KOC
coaching.
can be half of Andy Reid at some
Yep.
point.
Yep.
So I don't know. I will say this though: if you do have a really bad year, whether it's a purposeful tank or it's just kind of an accidental tank because your starting quarterback gets hurt and Nick Mullins has to play, I think this organization, from ownership to front office to Kevin O'Connell to the young players they have, I think it's stable enough to withstand a really bad year, and it always has been. Always has been. Every coach they've had to fire Childress after a bad year. They had to fire Frazier after a 3-win season. So, and then they always bounce back. So I don't fear it, but I'm not actively seeking the tank, I guess.
Yeah, no. Les actually came back and got him to the playoffs, and then didn't they go?
I thought they won
6-8.
Was it okay?
Or they
got
tied a
fired.
game against the Packers. Anyway, yeah, but this franchise now, just from a stability standpoint, is in great shape.
Yeah.
Like there were a lot of years where it's like they still won games, but Red owned the team. They were cheap. If you think about if they ever stripped it down as far as draft and free agent potential, they'd be in fantastic shape. Because if they had 1 year where they won 2 games and were then flush with great draft picks and cap space, there would be a lot of guys who would say, damn right, I'll play there in a second. Practice facility, stadium, training staff. I mean, there's a lot of things here, I think, that go beyond the record potentially that make this a very attractive place now for a player.
So curious to know if you guys want to hit us up either via the feedback function in the Score North app or the YouTube comment section. Do you think the Vikings have missed a tanking opportunity at some point, either this year or in the past couple of years? Are you pro-tank, anti-tank? We'd love to hear from you. That's your Saturday checkdown episode here of Purple Daily. Daily Vikings entertainment where we just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.